It is Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Appreciate you joining us. On today's show, it is time for another mailbag. You have questions, you're in luck. I have answers, and we will get to all of those and more in just one moment. Before we do, you may be wondering, how do I take part in these mailbag shows? Well, if you subscribe to the channel, then you would know that we go live each and every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Usually do a couple of mailbag segments where we take your questions, we react to them, and it's your chance to be a part of this show, to interact and get involved. It is a lot of fun, and we enjoy it. It's on our live shows each and every week. Subscribe now, youtube.com/Seahawks TV, and join us for our mailbag shows. We begin with our first question from Crew018, writes, do we take a quarterback like CJ if they're available at 5? So what's interesting is that Mel Kiper did his mock draft this week, and he had the Seahawks grabbing Will Levis at number 5. I have some skepticism about Will Levis, but I'm going in with an open mind. That's not the pick I would make at 5, but I'm open to discussion. Now, I did do a mock draft myself last week, and you can go back and watch the video if you haven't seen it already, where with the 5 pick for me, C.J. Stroud was available, and I took C.J. Stroud. So, yes, Crew 018, if C.J. Stroud's there, I would take C.J. Stroud. If Bryce Young is there, I would take Bryce Young. But beyond those two, then I'm kind of like, not so much. I'm going another route, probably defense, with that number 5 pick. So, Crew 018, yeah, I like C.J. Stroud at 5 if he's there, but we'll see. The Passmaster writes, #Seahawks. Tyler, no doubt they trade for DeForest Buckner, would do nothing but help. I really feel like the draft has plenty to offer this team. Seattle only needs a few more pieces to take the next step. The Passmaster and OG here at Chat Sports checking in. Thank you, Passmaster. DeForest Buckner, we talked about that, a rumor that was out there brought on by Brock Heward, the former Seahawks quarterback, and also does media in Seattle, about the idea of bringing in DeForest Buckner. I would love to see Buckner in a Seahawks uniform and the instant impact he could bring to this Seahawks team potentially. And there are some needs to address for sure for this team to make the next step, but I don't think they're very far off. The foundation, the bricks are being laid, and this team is on the right track as far as I'm concerned. Mad Mel Kiper writes in. That's interesting because I don't think I've ever seen Mel mad. He's always like going with that goofy smile and that, fake hair he's got on his head. But nonetheless, Mad Mel Kiper writes, he sent in a question, best trade scenarios for Lamar Jackson. Well, the best trade scenarios for Lamar Jackson, that's tough because what you would have to give up would be so much. Pretty much all you gained in the Russell Wilson trade last year, you would have to give all of that up for Lamar and then still pay Lamar. So I say all that to say I don't think there's any great scenario of sorts to bring in Lamar Jackson where you're not sitting there saying to yourself, man, we gave up a lot and taking a shot to the cojones, basically. So, Mad Mel Kiper, I don't see a great scenario to trade for Lamar, put it that way. ADHD writes, can you sign Geno and draft a quarterback in the first round? Yes. Yes, you can. Here's what I mean by this. I think, ideally, you want to give Geno Smith a 2 or 3 year deal anyway because he is an older quarterback, and you'll still want to see if he can do what he did last year, do it again this year. Kind of a prove-a deal of some sorts. At this age, I don't want to be giving a 4 or 5 year contract to a guy like Geno Smith right now. And so in that theory then, you could draft a C.J. Stroud or a Bryce Young to sit behind Geno Smith, and whenever they're ready, then they get the job. That could mean by the end of this year, that could mean even next year at some point. But yes, I think they are not mutually exclusive of some sorts. I think you can draft a quarterback in the first round and still sign Geno Smith. What say you? Should Seattle do both? Sign Geno and draft a first-round quarterback. Should they do both of those? If you think they should, type Y for yes. If not, if you don't think they should do both those things, type in for no. Let me know in the comment section. Y for yes, in for no. Geno for Hall of Fame. Whoa, that's aggressive, right? Hashtag Seahawks. Will Austin Blythe and Jackson, I believe that is Mike Jackson, be starters for us by next season? I hope Austin's not a starter for Seattle next year. I hope they find a better option for him at the center position. I think the Seahawks are kicking themselves that they missed on Creed Humphrey and Tyler Linderbaum the last two drafts. As far as Mike Jackson goes, will he be a starter? He could be. I think the Seahawks are going to look at options to potentially draft, and I think they hope that Kobe Bryant beats out Mike Jackson. I would say the likelihood is slim, but it's not impossible necessarily, the idea of now, the other Jackson possibility could be Gabe, besides just Mike Jackson. There are two Jacksons here. I don't think Gabe Jackson's going to be back next year. So I guess whether it was Gabe Jackson or Mike Jackson, chances are slim. Austin, I hope not. I hope he's not back next year. But thanks for the question, Gino. Duke wants to know, Seahawks is a sleeper. Is there a sleeper quarterback in this year's draft? I don't think so. I think everyone is pretty aware of the top four, and I think there's a big separation from C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young to Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. I personally don't like Anthony Richardson at all. I think Richardson is a terrible prospect, to be honest. I wouldn't use a first-round pick on him. He kind of reminds me of the same problems that Malik Willis had last year, and Willis ended up slipping up to the third round. So, no, I don't think there is a sleeper in this year's quarterback draft class, but we'll see what happens as we have the Senior Bowl and the NFLPA game, East-West Shrine game. You also have the Combine. There's plenty of time for one to spark up, but I don't think there's any sleepers right now. Today's show is presented by BetUS, the exclusive sportsbook partner of Chat Sports. If you go to chatsports.com/bet, you can get a 125% deposit bonus. When you use the promo code Seahawks125, you will get a 125% deposit bonus. Put $100 down, get $125 to spend for free. Chatsports.com/bet. You can bet on this weekend's NFL action. The lines are pretty close in that AFC Championship game and the NFC Championship game. NBA action you can bet on every night. College basketball as well. I would say this. My Kansas Jayhawks not playing too hot right now. Maybe fade the Hawks at this point. Not your Hawks, the Jayhawks, that is. Get your bets in now. Chatsports.com/bet. Next question. We know hashtag Seahawks need defense. What about signing Daron Payne or Deion Jones? I would love both those guys. I don't know if there's money to spend for both guys, but it's interesting the Deion Jones equation. That was actually brought up this past week about the idea of potentially the Seahawks bringing in Deion Jones. And we know the Falcons have been in rebuild mode, that they're looking to save some money and build for their future. And it seems, or actually Deion Jones, he was at the Falcons at one point, then, of course, went to the Cleveland Browns, and it seems unlikely that he's going back to Cleveland. And here's what NFL Analysis Network's Kenneth Teep had to say in regards to the idea of Deion Jones. In 11 games and 59% of snaps, Jones totaled 44 tackles, 6 of which were for a loss. He added 2.5 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, 1 interception, and 3 passes defended. Adding that kind of impact player to the mix would be a nice upgrade for the Seahawks defense, especially if they are unable to re-sign Cody Barton, who is also a free agent. Jones has been productive throughout his career, registering triple-digit tackles in every season he has played at least 15 games in. He's a proven playmaker, getting into the opponent's backfield with some regularity, and also holds his own in passing situations. So, yeah, I would be very interested in signing either one of those guys, Deion Jones in particular. But I want to know from you, who is your dream free agent target for Seattle this offseason? Give me a name or two that comes to mind who you think the Seahawks should look at this free agency period to potentially bring in to Seattle. Got time for a few more questions. Let's go to Teddy here. Teddy writes, I think the only problem with betting on the draft as the only way to improve is that not every player can make an immediate impact if they ever do. Teddy G, that's right. It's all about balance, right? I mean, think about the NFL offseason like an onion, okay? Here's what I mean by this. An onion has layers, okay? An onion, it takes the layers to all come together to complete the onion, right? Well, an NFL roster has layers too. Takes the NFL draft, takes trades, takes free agency to all come together and create the team that you want. And so I would say, well, I prefer doing whatever you can to build a young roster, your young core through the draft. I think that's your biggest layer of the onion here, but you still have to have a little bit of everything to put everything together. So with that said, yes, Teddy G, I understand where you're coming from. Your draft is priority number one, numero uno, but your next layers all have to come together too. You have to do well in the other aspects to get it all together. So Teddy G, understand what you mean. That is the number one priority, but you have to do well with the others too. Ask the Cowboys who have struggled in free agency and haven't done anything the last several years, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why the Cowboys haven't won, anything, haven't been in the NFC Championship in over 20 years because they can't figure out free agents. Steve Bailey writes, which interior O lineman would you draft or pick up in free agency? Well, that is a very good question, Steve. And, looking at, free agent offensive linemen at the interior, Ben Powers of the Ravens is one guy that's going to be available. Dalton Reisner, I really like from the Denver Broncos. He's another guy. Evan Brown. Those are just some of the names of the free agent offensive linemen, as here's a couple there from the folks at Pro Football Focus. Now, as far as the draft goes, you got guys like Osiris Torrance from Florida is a possible option. Joshua Gray from Oregon State is out there. Zach Center from Michigan. There are, Zach Center's actually going back to Michigan, rather. But nonetheless, Jarrett Patterson from Notre Dame's another guy. You got plenty of options. And it's not just the guard spot. Remember, you got to think about center as well. I doubt Ethan makes a homecoming. I don't think he's coming back to Seattle after going to Cleveland. But, maybe a guy like Garrett Bradbury makes that move. I think more than likely you're looking through the draft at the center position of guys there potentially. But we'll see. As far as the interior linemen go for the Seattle, we'll keep tabs on that. But they certainly will need to upgrade there. Get Right says, could you see us trading Tyler Lockett for a high draft pick, like a second or a third? No, it doesn't make sense financially for the Seahawks to trade Tyler Lockett of what he would count against the cap and how the cap situation goes. The second and third, certainly he would be, have some value. You could get some good picks for him, sure. But with what he would count against the cap at this point, it just doesn't add up. Your money doesn't work for you that way. So I don't see Seattle trading Tyler Lockett. Kind of like what I talked about earlier. There's a chance for Seattle to kind of be aggressive and push closer to being a contender of some sorts. What you think? Name a player the Seahawks should re-sign this offseason. Who should get a new deal? Geno's the obvious answer. Who else do you like? Who should get a new deal? Let me know in the comments section. Last question from Organic Grows. Wonder what that means. Right? Hashtag Seahawks. I would move Jamal Adams to the linebacker position instead of safety, draft a edge rusher at pick 5, and safety at 20, pass on a quarterback. We're getting Geno back. The idea of moving Jamal Adams is interesting because you had Ryan Neal and Josh Jones do a pretty decent job when they filled in with Jamal Adams going down. So that does provide some flexibility, and we know the Seahawks are shorthanded at the linebacker spot with Jordan Brooks going to be out for most of next year. So that's an interesting idea. And then edge rusher and safety going defense at those spots, that makes sense. Seattle, we've talked about on this show with their numerous needs. Passing on a quarterback, to me, I'll say this. I'll reiterate this, and this is going to be kind of my theme of some sorts for the next couple of months. if Seattle falls in love with a quarterback, if John Schneider and this scouting department says, we really love C.J. Stroud, we really love Bryce Young, heck, even if they love Will Levis, if there is somebody they fall in love with, you take the quarterback that you want to marry and you fall in love with and you make it work. But if you don't feel that certain way, then you just don't draft and you take another position of need of sorts. So that's where I look at that, Organic Gross. Thanks for the question. As always, you can interact with me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Tyler Jones Live, talking about your Seattle Seahawks there. And I will see you next time here on Seahawks Today.